time again for another episode of the PEBAheads, and we have a special guest, one of our GMs in the league. There he is, James from San Antonio.
How's
How's
it
it going?
hanging, everybody?
Well, we've got a lot to talk about today with all things San Antonio, and I know one of the topics that's come up in the past, one that we've talked about here, but it started with a Crystal Lake signing that went on for multiple podcasts uh, with an international free agent that came into the league. And I'm going to butcher his name because I always, what was it? I got to look at his name now. Now, get all Carl Burrow. I always would call him Burrows, but a Burrow watch. But, you know, San Antonio came in and kind of said, "Hold my beer. We're gonna play this game too." And you guys made a signing similar, but with a pitcher, and that was Jose Barrios. And one of the great things about just having this podcast is it allows GMs to talk about why they made a move, what thought process they went into doing it, and you don't have. I'm not asking for all of your secrets here, James, but
Sure.
what was the thought process, and what stood out about Barrios that you're like, hey, this is a guy that we want to put a significant investment into?
Well, two things, generally go into my analysis of a prospect. First thing being that my scout hates absolutely everybody. So if he's convinced that somebody's a 4.5, 5-star player, I'll have to do a little bit of digging to confirm, trust but verify. But usually I take his judgment at face value of, okay, that's a guy I should be looking at. Second of all, I'm looking at it from the perspective of I've had to strip everything down to the studs. We're in a full commitment to the rebuild. I have a generous owner who's willing to let me get away with a lot as long as the team's profitable. So that being said, I have a little bit of leeway with the money and a need for talent that's going to be around in 4, 5, 6 seasons. So if I can lock him down now, pay more up front, and he only gets cheaper later, I'm going to need him for the next 3, 4 years for sure. But I hit that window of flexibility when, all right, maybe he's not quite what I thought he was, but he still has some value. Maybe I can get something back for him that then gets recycled into the next wave coming up through the minors. So, in my mind, yes, it's a lot of money up front. I'm not going to pretend like a $27.5 million hit is, palatable to a lot of people. But in my situation where I've got to make every dollar count, I'm going to spend it on the best talent that I can that's going to be around for the long run. I'm obligated to do it.
Well, it's interesting. We kind of talked about this before we got on for the recording on this, but the other aspect too is, you're weighing someone who's already developed with almost to their potential versus if you didn't spend the money this way, perhaps you spend it on international free agents, which is another topic we're going to talk about later. But those guys, the hit rate on them, it's much lower than what someone like Barrios coming into the league looks like. I mean, right now he looks great. Like he could had a great year at AAA. He probably, I mean, if your team was in a different situation, he's probably on the roster or close.
Mhm.
But I think I know we had talked about this too earlier, but can you touch on like what your future plans? Like, do you plan on sending him to winter ball? Um,
Absolutely.
okay.
Making that big of an investment, you want to get the most out of them. And I think a two-pitch reliever probably isn't worth making a $27 million investment. But if he stays in AAA, up through the first week of next season, I can send him to winter ball. And, now he's a three-pitch reliever with 4 stamina, and he only gets cheaper on his contract. And that's where everything starts kind of coming together over the next 3 to 4 seasons. I'm thinking out, not, would I love to contend now? Sure. But is it worth giving up what I have right now? I started out, I didn't really have a whole lot. I traded away, there was a pitcher, trying to think of his name. I can't, old guy. Uh,
What team do you remember what team he went to?
I thought he went to New Jersey for a little bit. I think he's retired. Chris Brown.
Brown.
Chris
Okay.
Brown.
Yep.
Yeah. At Chris Brown. And he was like the only, in my mind, decent player on the team. He was an all-star that year. Uh, but I have to give him a good home if I have any hope of salvaging, what this franchise is capable of. We looking back at the history of it, we've made the playoffs, was it 2 times over 33 seasons? And when I took over in 2038, we hadn't made the playoffs in 20 seasons. I'm looking at it like in real time, they haven't made the playoffs in 10 years.
Yeah.
So that's where I'm like, okay, we need to start spending some significant money because I don't have any incentive not to. I'm an above average market with decent fan loyalty. They're still going to come to games.
Yeah.
But, the more that I spend on the, long run plan of this franchise, I'm not going to turn it around overnight. I don't have the assets to do that.
Well,
But
to
if I
to
keep
your point,
acquiring,
yeah. To your point, like, you inherited a team that hadn't been to the playoffs in quite some time, and then at the same token, didn't have anything really in the farm system built up for those lack of years of competing. So for what you've been able to do in your short time in San Antonio is impressive. And I let me go back a screen, but I think I had, yeah, you've been able to accumulate prospects in multiple ways, which I think is something that people don't do enough of. Like it seems like the focus gets, I'm going to go all in on drafting, but then no focus on the trade aspect of acquiring prospects by, knowing that your window isn't there. So you move a guy to get a couple prospects to add some more in there. And that's one thing I've noticed about San Antonio is that you're willing to make the moves, whether that is drafting someone, and we can talk about your draft pick here
Mhm.
coming up, but making the right draft picks, but also being flexible to know, hey, this guy's a great player, but we're not competing right now. So
Mhm.
let's get more guys in a window and try to maximize that window for the future.
Well, I'll give you a little bit of my personal lore that's been kind of sticking with me, and I don't even know if I told my brothers-in-law this story yet. Uh, so you'll hear it here first on PEBAheads,
All
guys.
right.
Uh, I was in the Boy Scouts, went to the National Scout Jamboree 2005 at Fort A.P. Hill in Virginia. And it was a hell of a time. One of the biggest things that you can do there is you can trade patches. You have a little patch that shows where you're from. Being from Toledo, we have the Jeep factory over there. And so our thing was all like, the Willis Jeep and everything like that. And there was a troop from Houston or close to Houston. It was some Texas city. I can't recall now. It's been 20 years, but Microsoft Bungie's headquarters was in the city. So they made Halo patches. And if you know anything about gaming in the early aughts, Halo was the franchise.
Oh yeah, land parties. I
Yes.
remember those.
Everyone wanted one of these things. And through just sheer dumb luck, I think I happened upon one of the, going to the same areas with a guy from that troop. And I traded him 4 of our shoulder rockers for one of his. And it was like my prized possession for all of maybe a day. And then I, being the gullible 13-year-old that I was, uh, gave away for a box of other miscellaneous. I mean, the military guys at the base would also trade us patches, so that was kind of cool. But for a bunch of miscellaneous patches I didn't really care about or get a lot of value from, I gave away my prized Halo patch. So I still think about that to this day. Whenever somebody's making me a deal or I'm trying to come up with something, I'm like, okay, you know, I'm going to give somebody enough value to justify it, but I also want that same kind of, you know, mindset in return of, well, I'm not taking anybody's Halo patch from them,
Right.
obviously, but I'm also of the inclination of I don't have to make a move because I'm playing this out for 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 seasons to see where this goes. And I'm just watering the plant.
Yeah. So with that long-term overview, does it help being in a league that you have some relatives in so that you can be that patient, or is that more of just your personality in general?
Uh, it, I'd say it's more my personality, but getting an idea for, and every league's different as far as the valuation goes. Uh, and self-admittedly, sometimes I play them off of each other a little bit of just, hey, Kevin made me this offer. Does this sound reasonable? Uh, but that also helps like, okay, they're not going to make me an offer unless there's something on, there that, I can justify it. So, shout out to Dan and Kevin and now Ryan. Uh, just so all your text messages get sent to every other brother about PEBA. So, and
That's good though.
I would expect nothing else, nothing less for myself. This is
It's good though because I mean, at least when you're coming new into the league, you're trying to figure out who you can have those type of conversations. At least you had when you came in, you had that already built in there where you could kind of bounce when you did get an offer from even someone other than them, like, hey, is my valuation off here? Or, like,
Mhm. Well, and even at that, it's a good way of thinking like, okay, am I looking into this too much? Or is there something here? And I'm not afraid to go to them and say, hey, I'm not really feeling this. I need like another thing on here where, at least from my experience with Kevin, it's like, hey, let's build a blockbuster deal and move all these people around where I'm like, I'm just talking maybe like a seventh instead of a sixth. I don't really need to overcomplicate a whole lot of stuff,
yeah,
because again, I'm playing the long game of I don't need to necessarily move anybody, but if I find a, you know, ability to improve my bullpen by a star or two, it's, going to cost me, another 1.5 or $2 million. This is monopoly money to me right now.
yeah,
It doesn't help me long run to just sit on additional profit, especially if my owner's like, well, you didn't meet your, 50% win rate goal, even though we're committed to a deep rebuild. I mean, his priority on that goal is low for me, but
yeah,
oh, you're going to take another $5 million off the top, whatever. I've
yeah.
got more people coming in the gate than have ever come in the last like 10 years in San Antonio. So
Is there ever like an itch to be on the same league that side of the league that they are, or do you like being on the opposite?
I was waiting for this one. So being from Toledo, uh, the Detroit is just about as close to Toledo as Cleveland is, but they're both in different conferences. So you could theoretically have the best of both worlds. I mean, both teams are the only ones to lose every game in a season. But theoretically, there could be a Browns Lions Super Bowl. That's what I want.
See,
You know,
that was where I was leaning if I had to answer that question, because that means when you do play them, it's for all the marbles. Like you're
and I can't arrange because all of our kids are toddlers now. I can't arrange for a toddler fight club. So Tommy being in the league, Eli being in the league, Henry now being in the league, this is the perfect opportunity of like, okay, Henry's a 4-star pitcher, but a 5-star left fielder. I'm like, now we get to see the head to head and the rotation. I forget if Eli is a pitcher or a
See here.
batter. 1 second.
I'm just gonna just pull all the veils up here. It looks like Eli is a catcher. Let me see if he's got,
Oh, that's right.
and then I
He's a
believe the
catcher.
other, let's see, Thomas is a closer now. Real, yeah, relief guy. So I think
It could
that's,
happen. It could happen. That's all
yeah,
I'm
I
saying.
it could happen in a really key moment down the road, which would be really cool. Then you're
And those are
bragging
those are
about
the
your,
narratives that I live for. That's
yeah.
what makes us interesting.
Well, I didn't want to get in. I didn't send this, but since we are talking about your son being your draft pick, what went into the whole process for those that haven't gone through the process of selecting a player and then changing that? Like, what was that process like for you? And then how did you key in on a player to be like, yep, this is who I want Henry to be?
Uh, well, my brothers-in-law set that for me a long time ago before
Oh,
I
okay.
even had baseball was still relatively new to me. uh, when I started to, orbit the PEBA verse, so to speak. I come from, a contact sport, lifting weights background. So baseball was just kind of like, I mean, it's on TV once in a while, but I'm not sitting down watching games. In Toledo, we have the Mud Hens, which is the Detroit Tigers feeder team, and like going to the ballpark's all right. But then my wife took me to my first major league game, for the Indians, now the Guardians. I was just like, this is cool. Like I could get down with baseball if this is what it's like in the ballpark. Totally different experience. And they've been kind of floating the offer for me to join at a time when, there was an opening. I said, you know what? I might as well. The exchange was that I got Kevin into the Warhammer 40,000 tabletop game. So I feel like this cost him a lot more money than and time than it's cost me. So I'd call it a good trade. But
Yeah.
I've loved every minute of it. You know,
Well, they definitely picked a good one. I know on our last podcast we were talking about who each of us would take number one, and Dolman was my number one. I think it just like you said, from a hitting standpoint, he's a 5-star prospect there, and then from a pitching standpoint, being a 4. If you get anything, if you get him as a 5-star hitting prospect and he does absolutely nothing as a pitcher, I'm still like I'm fine with you're
that's still
happy
a
with that.
five-star
Yeah,
prospect. Like,
right. And then now
uh,
it's like, shoot, if there's a way that you can figure it out where you utilize him, he doesn't even have to be a starter. He could be an opener for you and stay in the game. I know Commissioner Mike had posted something about one of the player, I think it was Dolman, um, had
with
appeared
the
already as like a pitcher, but also DHing at the same time. So I don't know. I know the settings there. I don't know enough about it because I just don't have a guy.
I
They're so rare to have a guy that can do both. But
I set him as a DH because I wasn't really sure like how he fit in for that first sim. But then I took a deeper dive with his stats and I'm like, okay, like he's not the best defensive left fielder, but that seems to make the most sense as far as where I can put him in the rotation and still kind of have him contribute some meaningful minutes. And that's nothing that winter ball can't fix down the line, assuming that, he qualifies and I can send him there. So
yeah,
that's, more contribution to the league and a little bit of money. Okay, his defensive ratings for his outfield range and his arm went up or something like that.
yeah,
Whatever he needs.
and it's
Now
going
he's
to
a good
be
defensive talent. He's a solid left fielder that, oh, by the way, he can also two platoon.
yeah.
So
I mean, really, like he's the closest guy that I've seen to an Otani, and maybe the pitching, maybe the stuff. If you add another pitch, then he gets up to what Otani's real potential is. But
mhm.
yeah, when you're looking at, I mean, when I'm thinking outfielder with a power bat, it's like that can also pitch. Like this is the guy, and it's going to be interesting and exciting to follow his progression and just think there's going to be a lot of teams that are going to be feeling some pain when they play him when he's actually developed. So it's going to be
I have to remind myself not to treat my real toddler like he's a 5-star hitting prospect.
yes.
He's 2 years old. We've got plenty of time. We'll play the long game, but maybe,
Yeah,
maybe.
that's what's great about this game. And it's, the other thing too is he's already a full star, at least from my what my scout is showing him as. And I
Well, I
know
think he's
OSA
pretty
was
close to
having
his.
him as like a half star, but I think my scout likes him even more than what OSA likes him.
Well, and at least from what I can see, maybe I'm wrong. I'm gonna pull this up, but I think it was pretty close to his home run hitting power.
Yeah, like 7 out of 9
For
or something
yeah,
like that.
but close as yeah, he's got a 7 out of 8 home run power relative to PEBA, according to my scout.
Yeah.
That's at the rookie level. So he's absolutely dinging these things off the back wall,
Yeah. Well,
out of
I
the park.
I have no problem showing people this that and people are like, "Oh, why are you showing your scout ranking?" I don't care. Like my scout likes him even more from a potential standpoint of a 9 power guy. So it's nice, like with him, it's nice to see that you know there's that 9 power plays like, and then you got the pitching side on top of it. So I haven't looked. I'm gonna pull him up as just rookie and see what. Yeah, look, it's crazy. Like it's gonna
Of course.
mash. Yeah,
I think it also helps that I think he's like 7 or he's like 6'9" or something like that. But
yeah, he's ridiculous. It's yeah,
it's just like, oh yeah, we found Otani with Randy Johnson's body.
yeah.
Like
Let's see what
the
his.
when they were pitching for me to join the league, they were like, "Oh yeah, we made Henry. He's an absolute freak of nature." I was like, "This
I guess.
gets me
Yeah,
giddy. This gets me
yeah.
going. All right, let's do this." So I was just like, "I'm not gonna let them coach him. I have to be the one." So
Oh, he's definitely
uh,
a good one to build around, and it's nice that you have the added storyline level where you can take that in so many different ways and still kind of talk some smack to your relatives, and then also but have fun with it too. Just
well, I got to live with them at the end of the day. So we'll keep the smack talk relatively light, but
yeah,
they even say like, we've got our time in the sun, and Dan stayed up there for quite a while. But Kevin and I are in the same boat of we're probably retooling our teams at about the same time. We'll see what happens.
yeah,
And now Ryan's taking over Madison, so it should be a good time all around.
yeah.
But I'll
No,
be waiting
it's
for them in the IL in a few years.
yeah, exactly. And it's nice to see with Ryan coming in and making some moves and trying to take Madison to that next level. That I think they're one of the few teams that have not been in the playoffs from what I remember. So
Mhm.
it's kind of it's nice to see. I know there's been I think 2 of our previous podcast hosts that were part of the Madison previous regimes, I guess, that use that as a launching point to other teams. So it's nice that hopefully now we can see. Let's see, we just had Florida's GM switch. I think he was at Madison before this for a brief period, but yeah, it's good to see. Yeah, somebody that's going to be in there and he's excited about being there and he's making moves. So
Yeah.
all right, let's see. We've talked about just overall your willingness to make trades. Has there been a trade that was your favorite trade that you've made so far?
Well, that kind of brings me into the Guinea,
Yeah, yeah.
or
Let's
uh,
get into that
Met.
one.
Uh, so Kevin and I sat down over some DeBellas, which if you've never been to the Cleveland or upstate New York area, is a nice little uh sub chain up here that puts you know stuff like Subway to shame. Uh, Homemade bread and everything. We sat down. Uh, he wanted to work something out and he needed some help and some cash. I said, I have a couple pieces of available for you. Uh, he's like, okay, what can we do in return? I think his initial offer was like a first and a third and a couple of guys. And at that point, uh, Wendell wasn't really somebody on my radar. I think he was probably like a 3.5 star prospect. But as soon as he hit my organization and started getting some reps in, now he's a 5 star. So looking back on it, I was like, okay, like I'm in it for more of the draft picks than anything. Uh, but the fact that I got a 5 star guy that's major league ready now, I mean, you tell me whether that's worth $20 million, for a cost controlled guy getting paid 560.
I'd I'd say it's well worth it. Anytime you can get somebody that is cost controlled, that's already developed, I would rather lump the money, take the hit of the initial investment, and roll the dice. I mean,
I call that more luck than anything, but I saw enough there that, for a 3.5 star guy, really I'm after the picks. But if I happen to get a Wendell out of it, then that's fantastic. And you can see there when he made the jump.
yeah, and really, I mean, if he never would have made the jump, it's still a 6, 7, 9 potential there. That
Mhm.
plays. That's something that you can flip for either future value or he's right in the middle of he's in that age, that window of when you can compete down the road. So yeah,
Right.
no brainer, I think. I mean, it's nice that he got that boost. It's real nice. But yeah, anytime you can add value, especially the situation you're in now, where you're just trying to accumulate uh as much talent that you can, whether it be, I mean, everyone wants 5 star guys, but
Mhm.
really it's those 3, 4 level guys that really kind of differentiate the top teams from everybody else.
100%. And that's what I'm kind of trying to build on right now is I have several pieces that are 5 star prospects that are in the majors right now, but then the bottom of my roster is like a bunch of 2 star filler guys. So, you make a 5% better adjustment across the board for each of these guys. Now your team's exponentially better than where you were, if only because now I have like 2.5 star guys instead of 2 star guys. Now I have 3.5, 4 star guys instead of 3 star guys. Now I can start building a rotation that like a 2 star guy might be a decent situational player, just depending on what they look like, but it's not likely. But the more talent, just raw talent that you can add to a team, the more tools you have in your toolbox.
Now, I see this is what I love about just having these discussions, because there's so much that you know you can dive deeper into these topics rather than in Slack, where it's just kind of the high level, trying to talk about stuff, talking about exciting things, but getting to hear you talk about just your how you're looking at this and taking the long view, just it's refreshing, because I think so many times people think that, oh, I need to have a turnaround, or I need to turn things around in 2 or 3 seasons, and it's just that's not like the likelihood
If
of
you
being able
have
to do
enough
it.
to do that, you can do that.
Yeah,
But if you're in a situation that I inherited, I'm burning the house down to build on the land.
yeah,
Uh, some people might feel some type of way where, it's your duty as a GM to compete. And I'm like, yes, I will compete, but I can't compete when there's not a solid foundation there. And I'll acquire a prospect however I can.
yeah,
If that's spending money in free agency, if that's, spending money on international free agency, if that's the draft, if that's, trading away a couple of, solid rotation guys that are cost controlled to get somebody that, you know, show some promise that's younger in the league, so be it.
yeah.
We're all rolling the dice here. This is all a game of numbers under the hood that,
Yeah.
I don't think any of us fully understand. And that's the beauty of it is, you know, do I take that chance or do I just sit by and, kind of get my one prospect a season that might be worth it and try to hope that some of my second and third round draft picks pan out.
Yeah. Well, and I
I,
mean the
I'm here
other
to prove Sam Hinkie right. For those that don't follow basketball, Sam Hinkie was the GM of the Philadelphia 76ers, and there's a wonderful 30 for 30 on him. Essentially, it basically says Sam Hinkie died for your sins. He got run out as the Philadelphia 76ers GM after burning the whole thing down, and he acquired as many draft picks as possible, which if you're trying to draft the next LeBron James, then you need as many draft picks as you can get,
right.
especially because there's a lottery system in the NBA. So you're not guaranteed the first pick, but you can increase your chances if you have unprotected first round picks from other teams. And so the 76ers were the laughing stock of the league for a number of years until all those draft picks hit,
Yeah.
developed, and went to the league or got traded for other prospects that fit the roster. And then now the 76ers were immediate playoff contenders the season after Sam Hinkie gets fired.
Yeah.
Uh,
What this reminds me of is a, a football team in your neck of the woods of recent history. The Cleveland Browns had a GM that was acquiring, I don't remember his name, but it's the one that was not there now, but acquired,
John Dorsey.
I believe it was Dorsey. He acquired so many draft picks, and people started being critical of, well, when are they going to go all in? And then he gets fired. The new GM comes in and basically blows all their draft capital on Deshaun Watson, and then has reaped some of the benefits of what he was building from the Browns are they're more competitive, but that trade and the signing have basically crippled them for the from a long-term
You,
standpoint.
you've removed your options. And I'm not saying Deshaun Watson is a bad football player, but to be a guy that turns around a franchise, I mean, look at CJ Stroud in Houston, what he's doing.
Yep,
I'm like, each one of those first round picks, assuming that you continue to be the Cleveland Browns, is basically an automatic first pick overall.
yep.
As much as I hate to say it.
Well, I mean, you look at what the Bears are finally doing versus what they had historically done with just putting quarterbacks in bad situations, and then now you have they've effectively built around so that Caleb Williams can come in and actually be protected and not running for his life. And it's like that's what the Browns could have done with all those draft picks and just taken a CJ Stroud or whoever. I mean, but
You don't even need a star quarterback if you have a look at the way the Cowboys ran their franchise.
oh yeah, I
Perennial
mean,
playoff threats behind the best offensive line in the league.
yep,
It even makes Dak Prescott look good.
yeah. I
And
mean,
I'm not
Tony
saying
Romo looked good.
I'm not saying Dak Prescott's bad, but as a franchise quarterback, I'm not picking Dak Prescott.
No, and I mean every team in the league passed on him for what 3 rounds, so it's not like um, that any other team would have was identifying him as like a true franchise type quarterback. So,
Sure. A little off topic, but
but yeah, let's
the
get back into.
all
I
right,
mean,
all
one
right.
more topic I want to get into with you, and it's
We'll talk Baker some other time.
yeah, we can get in Baker. Good God, so much that could be said.
Maybe on another episode.
Yeah, we'll get into that, but with international amateur free agents and with that pool, the signing period coming up here, I think after next sim. In the past, San Antonio has been active in that market and I'd say aggressive at times, which isn't a bad thing. Has it been has that been part of your strategy? Is it more of an opportunity type of thing?
A little bit of everything. It's a new opportunity. Being a new mechanic, I got kind of burned by it. Uh, but I had a whole lot of excess cash, in the previous seasons that it was available, and I gambled it on a pitcher that he's a rotational guy at this point, but is he the 5-star guy that I originally thought he was going to be at first? No, but uh, I think you'll see San Antonio still be competitive in it, but I'm not going to gamble all my eggs in one basket like I did last time. So I feel like it's a good way to pick up a lot of middle of the ground guys that obviously like or otherwise wouldn't get a second look. And you can keep them in the international complex until they age out. And then you have like these solid A ball, double A, maybe even triple A guys that are, as soon as they're done cooking, they're ready for that level,
Yeah,
as opposed to they go to the rookie ball and then maybe they're undermatched, overmatched. Who's to say? Uh, but at least you give them time in the international complex to kind of finish developing and before putting them in the rotation wherever they fit best.
yeah.
Uh,
And I
so
know,
that's been my finding on it.
okay. And I know, like with the switch from 23 OTP 23 to 24 international free agency, this period was one of the big changes in the game. And there's people on both sides of what they like, if they like the old method or the new one better. I know personally, I think you were probably right on the either the last part of it or into 24 when,
Yeah, I came in right at the end of 23 and they said just buy 24. So I don't really know how it worked before this. So
well, to kind of the top level of it was basically a lot less deeper pool and more of your scouting, random scouting finds also
mm,
filled your complex. With this change, they've reduced and I know Dylan can correct me if I'm wrong, but there's like a setting inside the game where we can have control of how many random finds are found. I think they reduced it a little bit, but just overall in general, the fines by your scout have been reduced just with 24, but the
mhm.
pool now is deeper. So I like it because you're not burdened by the just randomization of players being assigned to teams. You now have the
Mhm.
ability to, do I want to go all in on one guy or do I want to spread it out among, maybe the next level down and get a wider net and hope,
Right.
you know,
And I think that gives you the flexibility to do both. But I think that, at least from what I've been seeing of the interest in the top 10 or 12 guys in that international free agent draft pool, it's worth taking a look at some guys maybe a little bit further down the list that like you could probably score some pretty cheap international free agents just by being willing to go down the list, inviting them to a workout and get
yeah,
an idea of where their actual value is at. Because there's some that, that they have great, and I think OOTP 24 really overvalues home run power. I know
yeah,
people probably said that on Slack a lot, but it's like, okay, this guy can hit homers like nobody's business, but he can't make contact. So that's
yeah,
more or less useless. Uh, a lot of like guys that I see in the pool are, probably solid designated hitters, but it's trying to find those guys that are like, okay, thinking long term, can I put this guy in a rotation and is he going to be a defensive liability? Is it worth paying? Like with Jesus, it was like, this is a 5-star pitching prospect. But like some of these guys is like, is it worth spending $20 million on a designated hitter?
right.
You know, I don't think so. That's
Yeah,
my personal opinion, but
definitely. No, hey, thank you, James, for your time. I know we could go on, and we'll get you back on because I definitely
absolutely.
want to
We'll
get
do
in the
this
Baker
again.
conversation too. Also, we'll be having our next episode. We'll have all four of us, the PEBA heads, to discuss a variety of topics. One being who our best and worst players are in the league and why. We're going to take a look back at the 2037 draft, where there are quite a few pitching prospects that are making big impacts in PEBA right now. And then we're gonna start diving in, since with the All-Star break just happening, we're gonna kind of look at where things are at around the league. So we'll do those topics, and who knows, we might have some more. And really, I think when we're talking about other topics, I'm gonna ask the guys kind of to help explain to me what happened after I got off the last episode and everything went to hell. So I kid, it was fun. They were having fun and drinking, and no one can fault you for that, especially when no one else gets harmed. So with that, thank you all for your time this week, and we'll catch you again on next one. Bye.
Still looking to dive further into PEBA and the PEBAverse? Make sure you check out our friends over at PEBA Radio.